And their number 8 comes in and he binds me in a headlock. So he's got my chin kind of pinned down to my chest. It's just poof, god awful crunch in my neck. And then it's just like someone turned the light switch off to the rest of my body. I thought that this was going to be the best day of my life. And now I don't know if this is going to be my last day or not. Doctor comes back, he's got a bad look on his face. Very matter-of-factly, he says, "Robert, what happened to you is bad, really bad. And the reality is you will never walk again. And we're gonna do our best so that one day you can do something like feed yourself." But do I wish that none of this ever happened? Absolutely not. It gave me the greatest purpose I have in my life. If this is the road I had to take to get where I am today, then I'm grateful for that road.
With me for today's episode is Robert Paylor, the true embodiment of resilience, purpose, and mental strength. See, Robert was a rising star on UC Berkeley's rugby team when a devastating spinal cord injury during the national championship game changed his life in an instant. He was told he would never walk again, but Robert refused to accept that as his final chapter. What followed wasn't just a physical recovery, it was a complete transformation. I've had the honor to share the stage with Robert at one of my keynotes, and as soon as I heard him speak, I knew I wanted to bring his story to you. Now that we are live on YouTube, I read every comment, so drop your favorite lesson from today's episode. I'd love to hear what stands out to you. And as always, visit corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes for my favorite quotes from today's conversation. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Don, thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this.
This is preparing to be with you and to have this conversation has been one of the great joys. I love what I've learned about rugby. I have to admit, I did not know much before getting an opportunity to go spend some time in New Zealand with the All Blacks, which was incredible. And what a sport. But I want to start in a really kind of a tough spot. You grew up in California. You went to UC Berkeley to play on the rugby team there. And there was a moment in your sophomore year, you're playing in the national championship game that changed your life forever on the pitch there. Can you tell us about that moment?
Yeah, what a moment. A day that just I go back to often. And it was May 6, 2017. So as you said, kind of grew up lifelong athlete over here in the Sacramento area. I mean, it was always just hot summers and sports that are my memories growing up. And I kind of played like the big 3 sports that any male here in America usually plays: so football, basketball, baseball. But I loved contact, and that's where I really thrived. I was a very physical guy. My dream was to be able to play in national championships, right? And beyond this, to maybe be able to represent the United States. And these dreams were just materializing in front of me. So very grateful period in my life. And it was a good time to be me. And like I mentioned, opponent's Arkansas State. We felt really confident going into this game. I don't think they've ever won a national championship before. I think they competed for one a few years before that and they lost. And there was very much a been there, done that approach for us. So we're very cool, very collected. And very early on in this game, when we kick the ball off, it's like a minute and a half later that we're competing in a mall, which is when the bigger guys, we group up in a single unit and then we push to advance the ball. And the defense's job is to come straight in and stop us from pushing forward. Very much a boiler room, very much like where the big guys thrive. And like I said, I'm a big guy. I mean, I'm like drooling here on this field thinking, let's go, Rob, push this thing in. And I'm doing this. And then they start making these illegal moves, but the referee's not calling anything. So 3 players enter in from the side, which are all infractions in rugby, things you can't do, but the ref's not calling it. And then their number 8 comes in and he binds me in a headlock. So he's got my chin kind of pinned down to my chest. Now, normally in rugby, this is an automatic yellow or red card. You do that, you're gone from the game, but the ref's not calling it. So I think as an athlete in situations like this, there's really only a couple different courses of action that you can really take. I mean, one is you can stand up, you throw your arms out to the side and you say, hey, ref, what's going on? Are you going to call this thing? Or number 2, you just keep moving forward. And that was my decision. So I keep my shoulder level down, my legs are pumping. And as I do that, another player chops you down by my legs. So I start going down, but this guy with the arm lock around my neck, he continues to improve his bind. I can't get my head up. And I remember I go down, top of my head makes impact to the ground. but my body keeps going forward. So my forehead essentially slams against my chest and it gets pinned there. And then it's just poof, god awful crunch in my neck. And then it's just like someone turned the light switch off to the rest of my body. So I'm fully conscious, fully clear at this moment, just as conscious and aware as I am right now in this conversation, but completely numb and motionless from about the collarbone down. And my thoughts just ran wild because I'm thinking, whoa, this is bad. This is really bad. I start thinking back to stories I've seen before where I saw stuff like this happen. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Eric LeGrand, the Rutgers football player. You know, on a tackle and kickoff, he broke his neck, cervical spinal cord injury. And I mean, he has the spirit of an absolute warrior. And it's amazing what he's done with his life. But I remember he couldn't even breathe in the beginning of his injury. And he still deals with some significant mobility impairments. It's changed his life. And I started thinking, that's my future. You know, I will be lucky.
You knew Eric LeGrand's story before this happened to you.
That's right. Yeah, I remember just kind of posted up in my bed. And, you know, before I was going to bed and scrolling around, I see this story. I'm intrigued. I watch it and see this, you know, this journey of him, you know, D1 athlete, football player in America, rising talent. And then he breaks his neck and his life has completely changed. Kind of familiarized me with this sort of sports injury. And I thought that's got to be me, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen here. So I have all my dreams, all my goals. You know, I want to play rugby at this highest level I can. And you know, I'm getting into the High School of Business here over UC Berkeley, the #1 public university in the world. And you know, I want to have a family one day. And what person is going to want to marry into this situation? I want to have a great career. How can I?
You're having all of this while laying on the turf.
In seconds. Oh my gosh, in seconds. And I mean, things are just going wild in my brain. And the referee didn't even stop play. So the game of rugby is continuing to unfold around me. My medical staff runs over, they form a barricade around me so that someone doesn't land on me. Because if they did, my injury certainly would have been more severe. I possibly could have died. Luckily, we score on them, and that stops play. So they're doing their tests. You know, Robert, can you feel this? Robert, can you move anything? You know, squeeze my hand, wiggle your toes. I'm gritting my teeth down. I'm doing everything I can to just get something to move. Nothing. So they stretched me off the field. And this was a moment that like really stuck out when I know this is really bad. Where what do people do when they get injured and they get stretched off? A lot of times they give a thumbs up. You know, they let everyone know that everything's going to be okay. I'm okay. I'm going to make it through this. And I wanted so badly to give that thumbs up. I couldn't even get just a twitch. And someone even asked me, Robert, can you give us a thumbs up? And I said, no. So I get over to the hospital. They cut my jersey off. It's actually hanging in the other room in my house. And I took some CT scan, X-ray, MRI. Doctor comes back. He's got a bad look on his face. Very matter-of-factly, he says, Robert, what happened to you is bad, really bad. And the reality is you will never walk again. You will never move your hands. And we're going to do our best so that one day you can do something like feed yourself. So if you could do something like pick up a piece of pizza and bring it to your face, you made it. You beat all the odds. And my doctor also recommends surgery to me, spinal fusion surgery. He explains that the disc in between my C5-6 vertebrae ruptured into my spinal cord and also had fracturing at the C5 and the C6 vertebrae. So the damage that was done to my spinal cord might only continue to increase unless we go into an immediate emergency spinal fusion surgery, essentially permanently casting this area of my spine, which had been broken. And he said is my best chance at stability and recovery, but it was a potentially life-threatening surgery. So here I am.
You're what are you, 19?
20. Yeah, 20 years old. 20 years old, sophomore in college. I thought that this was going to be the best day of my life. And now I don't know if this is going to be my last day or not. And in that moment, I didn't have a lot of choices. And I didn't have a lot on my side. You know, I didn't have some doctors saying that everything was going to be okay. I didn't have all these statistics that I could look at. And I didn't have signs of life showing up in my body. but I had this decision to just keep moving forward and give everything I had. I had been very lucky to be on some high performing teams in my rugby experience. And never when we were down, with 10 minutes to go in the game, did we just give up. And never when we were facing an opponent who was way better than us, did we just give up and say, this isn't going to happen. No, we gave everything we had. And it was that exact same choice I decided to make, to give everything I had at this recovery, and decided that I needed to go into this surgery. I needed to do this. So I did. And I remember just.
Now, are your parents there? Are your parents part of the decision-making process? How have you, I mean, I just would love to dig into that.
Yeah, they were there. They were at the game. Easily saddest moment in this entire journey when I was laying there on that field, and they came up, and I couldn't get anything out of my voice other than I love you more than anything in the world. I was too choked up. I remember my dad sitting next to me. He went down on his knees and he grabbed my hand, and I couldn't feel it. And my mom's right behind me saying, "We are here. We will never leave you. We will always be there for you." They were there with me in that hospital as we were making those decisions. And I was just thinking, like, these are the most terrifying moments you could possibly live on this earth that we're going through right now. And I needed every bit of their support. I needed my brother, who was taking the SAT during the match, and after getting out was notified of what had happened, that I was going to this potentially life-threatening surgery. He needed to get there immediately. And he was the strongest person in the room on that day, because I wanted to call my friends. I wanted to type up some messages. Obviously, I couldn't hold a phone. I don't think most people could probably hold on emotionally. And I had him call my buddies and FaceTime them. And he'd hold the phone right in front of me, and I'd tell them what happened, that I don't know if I'll ever see them again, and that I love them, and thanking them for just always being there for me. He typed out a message to my teammates. He typed out a message to a religious retreat group that I did in high school. And he didn't shed a tear, because I told my mom to tell him he is just not allowed to break down in here. It will absolutely crush me. And he composed himself. He might have had to kind of dab himself in the eye. I didn't really look at him that much. I just couldn't have taken that on emotionally. But he was just such a strong person. I really needed him, as I wanted to send those, what could potentially be my last messages, to the people who were very close to me in my life.
But this theme, this keep moving forward theme, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, it was what you were doing as in the mall. It's what's the hardest part for you, or what was the hardest part for you waking up to the new reality after the surgery?
It was the fact that, like, this was really real. So I was honestly holding out some hope that we would go into the surgery. I'd wake up and they'd say, like, "Oh, Robert, we found a kink here or a blockage there, and you're all good. Have your breakfast and don't forget to leave a tip when you're going out the door." And, so I wake up, I'm bleary eyed, all the monitors are going off in the room, and I'm completely numb. I'm motionless. At this time, I can probably lift my arms a few inches off the ground, but if I needed to, like, itch my nose or something, that just wasn't happening. So I was like, okay, this wasn't a bad dream. This was real. And luckily, there was a doctor who came in, different doctor this time, and he gave me a little bit of hope. He was like, "Robert, your injury is bad. I'll be honest, the odds are not on your side, but you do have a few things that are going for you. One is you're young. Your nervous system is still developing. That's good in these situations. The other is you're an athlete. Your body's stronger. It's going to be able to handle the treatments that are coming your way. But most importantly, you've got that mindset to keep pushing. This is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done in your life. You're going to need to push yourself to do things that are very uncomfortable. We're going to be putting many hours of physical therapy every day. And it's not something that you do for just a week or a month. This is years in the process we're looking at, potentially your entire life. And you're going to need to be able to draw upon that. So those are some positives going for you. So that's something that really got me. But when I think of, like, how I was able to move forward through all those moments, before I went into that potentially life-threatening surgery, I decided to call my spiritual director. My faith is very important to me, and I wanted to call him to get some advice and some prayers before I went into this. And he told me these words that just gave me a lot of power in what should have been a powerless situation. And I continue to draw upon to this day. And he said, Robert, what happened to you is terrible. And throughout this journey, there's going to be a lot of things that you just can't control. But the one thing you always have control over is your mindset. So your positivity, your ambition, your willingness to wake up every day and fight this is up to you. And this injury can't take that away from you. So like I said, I had a lot of things that I couldn't control in my life, but the one thing I did have control over was that decision to keep moving forward. And sometimes I think we try to make decisions in our life just too complex. And we're putting together all these factors, or we're looking at just this mountain of a task that's in front of us, just an Everest-sized task. And we get too scared. And sometimes I think we just need to look down at our feet and say, let's go one step forward. So for me, that was like, I couldn't eat at the time. I physically couldn't swallow. So that's putting a tube up my nose and down to my stomach. You ever done one of those COVID tests where it feels like they're like tickling your brain?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like that times 100, right? I mean, 3 days of attempts. And, but it kind of came down to this thing where it's like, I need to eat. My body needs nourishment. It's been 3 days. It doesn't matter how painful this process is. I need to control my mindset. I need to keep moving forward. When I ended up getting pneumonia as well, which is dangerous for anybody, right? But was very dangerous for me because my diaphragm was mostly paralyzed. And it was every 3 hours they would come in and do a breathing treatment. So that didn't matter whether it was 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. If the alarm rang, I needed to clear out my lungs or I would die. Control your mindset. Keep moving forward. Didn't matter how tired I was, I could keep moving forward regardless of my circumstance. And I think that's something that rings true for all of us.
You know, I love this, but I think one of the things that really stands out is that a lot of people in this moment, we know them, would say, "Why me?" Right, and maybe even spiritually, they might look at God and say, why are you putting this on me?" But you never did. Was it this moment with that spiritual advisor in your life that you made the decision that will not be I will never ask that question? I mean, when did you wipe that question from the slate?
Yeah. I never asked that question because I think it was so a part of my foundation, which is something I really try to preach a lot, because I've been able to deal with this injury rather successfully, especially in those beginning moments when it was most critical, because it wasn't the first time that I ever challenged myself. And it wasn't the first time that I had to shoot to be that outlier in these statistical odds. And a lot of that comes back to sports. And like I was explaining, I'm competing for the 2 most successful rugby programs in their respective age groups. So we were always pushing for number 1 in the nation. I mean, we're now at 33 national championships for the Cal Rugby program. That's with the tournament only being around for about 50 years, by the way. So
you are the All Blacks of college rugby. No
That's
question.
right. Yeah. American collegiate rugby. I mean, Cal Rugby carries a level of success that just is not matched anywhere. And to be able to achieve that, you can't ask those why me questions when things are going tough. I mean, it has to be kind of like the why not me questions. Why can't I do this? What's holding me back? And so I think that's something that's important for all of us to realize, is that we can't wait for life to become a challenge before we start challenging ourselves. You really need to seek discomfort. You need to start building that foundation so that if a storm ever does hit you, you're going to stand strong. So fortunately, I didn't really have to make a specific moment where I felt like I needed to access this inner resilience that I've never seen before to be able to keep moving forward. It was just taking those tools that I had used previously in a different endeavor and applying it to a new one, albeit a different degree, but there was some similarity there that helped me to be able to just push and control my mindset.
So I'm going to ask for some coaching, right? On behalf of those who are listening, and we're always trying to find things that they can take specifically from this conversation. I'm stuck. I am on the verge of asking a why me question related to something. I don't even know what it might be. Coach me. Give me some Robert Paylor coaching.
When I'm feeling down, when I need some motivation, I think the strongest tool that we can access is perspective. I think perspective is the key to happiness. I think it's the key to resilience. And a lot of times, I think we treat perspective as just this subconscious thing that, when it's good, it's good. But when things are really tough, we just kind of accept a bad perspective on life, or negative perspective, maybe. And I think it's something that we need to influence intentional control over. So as I've gone through my recovery journey, I've been able to look back at those moments when I couldn't breathe, when I couldn't eat, when I couldn't move anything. I compare that to the struggles I go through now. And spoiler alert for folks, I've gained an incredible amount of recovery. If you're watching the video, you can see me moving my hands and wiggling my fingers. I can, in fact, walk up to 400 yards in my walker now. It's incredible. I mean, it's like short of a miracle, right?
Right.
But it's hard. It's not easy. And I continue to work at this every day. And there's plenty of times when I'm walking through my house and I'm dragging my feet and I'm just doing everything I can to put my foot a few inches in front of the other. And I look back on those moments when I would have given anything to be able to have that. It helps you keep moving forward. But beyond that, and most importantly, is looking at the stories of others, because you don't have to go through what I've gone through to be able to have that perspective. In fact, I recommend that you don't. But if you have empathy, if you have a willingness to look beyond yourself and unite your emotions with the struggles of others, you can have that perspective too. And we all know people in our personal lives who have overcome immense challenges. So there was this one moment that really solidified it for me. I was in a place called Lourdes, France, which is a place that's known for miraculous healing. I was invited there by a religious order exactly 1 year after my injury. So it was this incredible experience over there in France. They had 20,000 sick or injured people that they brought from all over the world there, each with their own individual ailments. There's people with spinal cord injury, quadriplegia, ALS, cancer. I'm talking to these people, they're housing 30 pills a day throughout their entire routine. And they're saying, Robert, I've got stage 4 cancer, tumors blown out through my entire body. My doctors tell me I have months to live. Got a beautiful family, children and kids I'd give anything to just have time with. And this is really hitting me hard. I've got a lot of challenges I deal with, but my life is guaranteed to the same extent as anybody else at this point. I was sipping a beer with a priest who was there and telling him about this real transformation that was going on inside of me, really, really laying roots deep in my soul. And we came up with this phrase called compared to what?
Compared to what?
Compared to what? And it would be, an application would be like, oh man, I'm really tired right now, but compared to what? There's a lot that I'm going through right now, but compared to what? There's a lot that I can do. There's a lot that I do have. So that statement is not meant to dismiss our challenges. I think it's really unhealthy if we just dismiss our challenges. It just ignores it. The challenge will never go away. But when you use that phrase and you use perspective the right way, it puts all those challenges down to size. It puts them into perspective and helps us realize that what we go through is overcomable. There's just so much that we can achieve. So I think when you access that perspective, those why me questions don't even come up, because you're thinking about the positives you have in your life. You're thinking about all the things that millions of people in this world right now would give anything to have. So you just focus on how you can use them and how you can overcome whatever's in front of you.
Compared to what? Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Is that, you mentioned that it was a religious, a priest who worked with you on the development of that. But I know a big piece of your, what I've read about your recovery is that you credit what you're able to do today. And I love being able to watch all the energy that you bring into this conversation. You refer to your athlete's mindset as being so important. You've talked about the moment that you moved your toes again as one of the happiest days of your life. Now I can't even, again, like you're giving me a lot of compared to what to think of today, but tell me about that moment.
Huge moment. So I had this kind of self-prescribed rehab, like on day one, where I would try to move every muscle I could, 20 reps. So I could shrug my shoulders always, right? So I'd shrug my shoulders, 20 reps. I'd keep moving down my body to things I couldn't move, like squeezing my hand into a fist. And I mean, it's everything I have. I know what muscles are supposed to activate, right? So I'm focusing on that muscle group. I mean, I'm like on the brink of passing out. I'm trying so hard. Nothing's happening, but I'm envisioning it. And I'd go all the way down to my toes. And it was about 6 weeks after my injury. It was Father's Day, actually, in 2017. That I'm looking down at my toes and I get just a flicker of movement. And I'm like, pinch me, right? Did this really happen? So I try again. And again, it's all my effort. I'm really straining here. And it twitches again. And I just started pouring tears out of my face. And I'm calling everybody and their mother to watch me wiggle these nasty, yellowed out, feet because they got stepped on so many times playing sports. Just like, look at this, like, see what's happening. And I mean, huge moment, right? And whenever I give talks, speeches, I like to go back to this moment and say, like, if I were to ask you all to start wiggling your toes right now, this place isn't going to just erupt, right? We're not going to blow the roof
There's
off.
no tears.
Yeah, right. And it's obvious. It's because I lost that ability. I lost a lot of things in my life. And I started realizing just how much I took for granted. I mean, to play rugby, to go exercise, to go for a walk, to breathe, to wiggle my toes. I didn't really give it that much of a thought at one point, and I started realizing just how lucky I was. And, there's this saying that you don't know what you have until you don't have it anymore.
Mm.
I think that's a horrible way to live. Why should we wait to lose something before we start showing appreciation for it? I think it's really important that we take a mental inventory of everything that we have right now, that we set aside time, bookending your day, waking up in the morning, think about the things that you're grateful for that you're about to take on. At the end of your day, when you're going to bed, to think about the things you're grateful for that you encountered on that day. We just can't let these things pass us by because they're all gifts.
But you would probably admit that it took what happened to you in order for you to gain that perspective, correct?
To that significant of a degree, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think to some degree, we can all appreciate that. Like I said, my life isn't in jeopardy anymore, but I try to access that greater sense of appreciation for it, looking at the stories of others who do have that. So I think it comes back to that empathy, right? We really have to be able to look outside of ourselves and empathize strongly with others so that we can have that kind of that perspective, that appreciation, because everything we've got is a gift. So let's embrace it like gifts.
I love it.
Yeah.
You've been asked many times, listen to recordings of you and other things, if you would change anything about your life. And your answer has always been no. My injury has given me more than it took away because it allows me to share my story to inspire others. Where does that come from?
I'll tell you a story that started to root this because my injury's given me my purpose in my life. I share this story and I help others overcome their challenges. And some of those challenges are quite significant. So to share this story, I used to coach youth rugby camps. When I was playing rugby at Cal, I'd come back to Sacramento where I learned to play rugby. And the age range was like 10 to 14 years old at this camp. And there was this one camper there whose name was Talon. And Talon was one of the smaller kids on the field, but he played with heart. He's like a Rudy type. And everyone just kind of roots for someone like that, right? And I remember I would give him the ball and pick him up so he could go score. So like, imagine me, 6'5", D1 athlete, like bobbing and weaving in between 10-year-olds. Like I'm putting a Heisman on little Jimmy so Talon could have his moment. And we shared this real bond. And it was around the time of my injury, just like 5 days later, that my high school was hosting a prayer service for me. And they're praying for my healing. They're praying for my strength. And it's on this day that my dad shows me a picture on his phone of someone who I did not recognize, but he's obviously fighting for his life. His hair is very white and thin. Skin is pale. Body is just skin and bones. And my dad tells me this kid is Talon. And Talon was fighting stage 4 cancer. And his mom wrote a caption, and it read along the lines of Talon wanted so badly to be at the prayer service to pray for Robert today, but he had to be in the hospital undergoing chemotherapy. And he's wearing his Jesuit rugby shirt that the team gifted him in his first round of chemo. It's his goal that when he beats this cancer, he wants to go play rugby, and Robert inspired him to do that. And the message goes on further. It says this sentence that seared into my soul, and it solidified that statement for me. And it said, stay strong and keep smiling, Robert. Your strength helps Talon stay strong too. Another one of those moments where tears just start pouring down from my face because I realized right then that overcoming this injury is not about me. It's about him. It's about all those people who are inspired when I choose to fight another day. So I've been at this. I'm coming up on 8 years here on May 6th.
Wow.
And I work out every single day and I push to get better, not just so I can go from point A to point B on my feet. That's not something that can keep you going that long. It's that selfless commitment to others. For a person like Talon, for all these people, it's amazing what people go through that we can't see. But when they confide in me their struggles and how my fight and this journey has been able to inspire them, that's just not something that I could ever wish away. So like, now caveat, do I wish that I could walk again? Do I wish that like I had that full able-bodied back? Yes, of course. I work at that every day. But do I wish that none of this ever happened? Absolutely not. It gave me the greatest purpose I have in my life. It's given me this ability to connect with others in a way that I just wouldn't have if this injury didn't happen to me. So if this is the road I had to take to get where I am today, then I'm grateful for that road.
Wow, that's so powerful. Before we continue, I want to remind you that if one of your 2025 goals is writing a book, but you don't know where to start, I'm here to help. In my new role as publisher at Forbes Books, I'm working alongside a world-class team to guide aspiring authors like you through the process of getting published. Whether it's a story, a big idea, or a project close to your heart, now's the time to make it happen. Just visit forbesbooks.com/Don to get started. You know, your rugby coach at Cal, Jack Clark, is one of the great legends of the sport. In fact, he and I had the chance to spend some time interviewing him a few years back on when I was building the book on high-performing teams, great teams. As you pointed out, 33 national coming up on 33 national championships, right?
The program. I think on that under Coach Clark, I think he got 29 personally. He's an incredible person. Incredible.
Wow. And I know he emphasizes in his discussions with you, right? There's physical toughness, which again, you can do certain things to become more physically tough. But the real gift is mental toughness, right? It's that ability to just be mentally tougher than your competitor. How did he teach you that?
Yeah. So one of the wonderful things about Cal Rugby and how they're able to be so high performing is they have a very strong glossary of terms and set of values. So we could ask 100 people what's their definition of mental toughness, and they'll probably have 100 different definitions. They might be pretty similar, but there'll be some kind of difference to them. At Cal Rugby, our definition of mental toughness is the ability to focus on the next most important thing. So in a rugby context, that would be where somebody passes you the ball, you drop it, goes forward to the other team. Okay, mistake happened. You can sit there and pound your fist into the dirt, get all angry, get all flustered. You're going to be distracted. You're going to miss that tackle that you need to make. You're not able to move on to the next most important thing. In a situation like that, the mentally tough person would be able to just internalize that frustration, push it to the side, think, what's going on now? What do I need to focus on? That's a rugby context. And I think this applies to all facets of life. It's certainly applied into my injury in those moments when I kind of needed to control my mindset. I was accessing that mental toughness. I think it very much applies in a business context, in a leadership context, when adversity strikes us, to be able to just kind of reset, think about that mental toughness phrase, focus on the next most important thing, and look at that and make that our focus. So very important term.
I want to talk a little bit more about this glossary of terms.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, I do think the best teams speak a different language, right? They actually, the words that they use are incredibly important, and they're different than other organizations. As you said, you ask somebody else, what does mental toughness mean? It goes all over the place. Not at Cal, right? Not at Cal Rugby. Talk to me about how important it was to have that glossary of terms and maybe even share a couple others if you don't mind.
Yeah, incredibly important that we could speak that same language, especially for these values and terms that are so important to our line of work, in this case, rugby. Another one was leadership, which at Cal Rugby is defined as the ability to make those around you better and more productive. So notice that has nothing to do with hierarchy. It has nothing to do with authority. It's not, if you're the captain on the team, you're a leader, or if you're the coach or anything like that. It's the ability to make those around you better and more productive. That's something that anyone can do on a team. So if you are the captain, of course you can contribute in that way. You can give a speech that riles up your team. You can get out there and lead by example, pushing when others are starting to drop off. That can be the freshman who just joined the team, doesn't know anybody, but's holding a tackle bag and doing everything they can to give the starter a good rep. They're leading in that situation. So yeah, leadership, something that's very important in that glossary of terms. At Cal Rugby, we also have a shared mindset, which is a term coined by Coach Clark, to be grateful for everything, entitled to nothing. So grateful for everything, right? We are grateful for the fact that we can compete at the #1 public university in the world in such a great rugby program, such a great place. We're not just going to let that be taken for granted. We're not just going to let that just sort of pass us by and get normalized. No, we're grateful for that. We're grateful for the fact that when we're done training, we can put our dirty laundry on a loop, throw it in a bin, and the next day it's folded it in our cubby, ready to go the next day. We're not going to let that get normalized. We're going to be grateful for it. Entitled to nothing. We're grateful for all we have, but we don't feel any entitlement to it. And when you don't act with entitlement, you work harder for what you get, I think. And that's served us. And I continue to use that personally. But when we go on a travel, team, and there's a lot of different teams that will play, some will play, and a lot of different places we'll go and form up in a Safeway parking lot if we have to. And we're not entitled to anything. And so those are some terms that just really helps unite us under a common theme, common bond, common goal that we can use to, great success.
I love it. And that language becomes that, as you said, it becomes your common bond. And, North Carolina women's soccer, Anson Dorrance has phrases that each one of his players memorize, throughout the year. And it becomes, it's the language. It's the language of excellence. And
that's right.
It's really, really powerful. At your graduation at Cal, you stood up from your wheelchair and you walked across the stage.
Yeah.
Standing ovation. Like I can't even imagine, right? Tell me about that.
Oh, such a cool moment. I mean, being able to walk across the stage at graduation was one of those kind of like light at the end of the tunnel type things, like carrot on stick. When I was really going through the thick of it, I needed these moments to fuel me, to drive me to achieve. And I mean, what better thing to be able to get injured in your sophomore year or something like this, where you're lucky to feed yourself again and then be able to return back to UC Berkeley, get that sheepskin and receive that diploma standing on your feet. I was like, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. So, in those days when I didn't feel like giving it my all, that was something that I was looking for and helped me get up out of bed, helped me give a best effort. And so, I get to the point where I'm doing good on my grades. Everything's going to line up here to be able to get the sheepskin. And I get it, and I'm walking. I can get up into my walker. I can take those steps, and then COVID hits. I graduated in 2020, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, no way. Luckily, UC Berkeley put together a graduation about a year later that we could have for the class of 2020. And we put it in the Greek Theater, which is just this awesome outdoor amphitheater in Berkeley. I mean, Winston Churchill's been there. Martin Luther King's been there. The Beatles, just like huge names have been in
Robert Paylor.
Robert Paylor, yeah.
Basically, all the big names.
All the big ones, right. And I'm not, it's a pretty routine thing for me to just walk like 10 yards, right? I have no stresses about that. It's different when you got 10,000 people all staring at you, screaming their butts off. And I got there with my rugby coach, Coach Billups, who, by the way, directed my rehab for 2 years when I returned back to Cal. Another amazing story. And I had my, at the time, girlfriend and now wife behind me holding my chair steady. And I just remember kind of planting my feet down, getting ready. Coach Billups held the walker in front of me. And, they call out my name, Robert, Jeffrey Paylor. And I stand up. There wasn't a single person who wasn't screaming and clapping and standing up. And I took those few steps. Coach Billups handed me my diploma. and I just thrust it into the air like as hard as I could. Such a victorious moment. And I mean, I hope when a lot of people saw that they saw themselves overcoming their challenge. That because I've had so much support throughout this, and a lot of times I don't really get to visualize it. You know, how do you? Once people are just so generous as they've been in my situation, and to see all those faces in front of me just showed me how lucky I am. And I hope for them that whatever they were going through in their life at that moment of time, that they were inspired to overcome it. And I mean, just what a cool reciprocal moment. And I come back to that moment a lot.
You had a great line at the beginning of the answer there. You talked about you needed that moment to fuel you, right?
Yeah.
You needed the carrot to dangle out there. What can the rest of us learn from that? How can we learn how to properly dangle a carrot, right? That might be just almost a crazy idea, right? The idea that you would walk when at the time you're having it, you're just crying to wiggle your toes, right?
Yeah.
How do you walk me through that? Maybe help me think through how I could be better at that.
Goal setting is so important. We all have to spend intentional time goal setting. Lucky for me, I had a lot of time to do that in the beginning because I was bedridden, right? There was nothing I could do. And when my thoughts were running wild at night, when I didn't have any treatments, when there couldn't be anybody in the room there to keep me company or talk to, instead of just wallowing in how bad things had become, I was setting goals for myself. That was one of those goals. And when it comes down to it, and a lot of these kind of pivotal moments in our lives when we choose to just kind of take our foot off the gas or keep going, you have to want it. And in order to have that, you have to know what you're working towards and you have to believe that it's going to happen. So pretty hard to wrap your head around what that desire feels like for a person who has lost their ability to walk, to be able to walk again. But that's what we're shooting for. As bad as you want to walk, you need to want to achieve this thing. So for me, I spent a lot of time thinking about that vision. So I think there's in goal setting, there's two things we need to have. There's daily stuff, and then there's that vision, kind of overarching goal. So for me, my vision one day is to be able to be wheelchair independent, to stand up out of my
That's your goal today.
That's kind of like the overarching goal, the big one. Yeah. That I will stand up for my wheelchair one day. I will never sit back down in it. That's like that fire that really keeps me moving. So I want it so badly. And then from there, a lot of times when we set goals, I think we think from present reality to get to where we want to go. I think it's good if we flip that around. And this is something I learned in one of my business classes over at Berkeley from a professor named Dan Mulhern, to think from right to left, not left to right, not that time continuum from present to future, but break it down, always focusing on that end goal, kind of like Stephen Covey's keep the end in mind. So if I want to be able to be wheelchair independent one day, I'm going to be able to need to walk at least a mile before I can confidently say I am wheelchair independent, in one given bout, right? And before that, I'm going to need to be able to get myself up off the ground if I fall down. That's not an easy thing to do. Before that, I'm going to need to be able to at least get from my knees, to be able to maybe support myself on a couch or something like that, get to the seated position, then get up. Well, before that, I'm going to need to be able to stand up from the couch. Before that, I'm going to be able to need to walk to the couch. All these little things, you can see where I'm going. We are breaking it down, but it's all rooted in that major goal of being wheelchair independent. So that's my vision. But in order to keep myself accountable to that, because I can't really set a time horizon for when I'm going to be able to be wheelchair independent, there's just too many uncontrollable factors there. I have daily stuff that keeps me accountable to that goal. So I make sure I'm getting out of bed by 7 o'clock every morning. That's my threshold. And I wish I could say I got up at 5 a.m. and I was just grinding it out, but I don't know. I need my beauty sleep. And so 7 a.m.
It's working for you.
Thank you. It's a good program. And anyways, so that is something that keeps me accountable to make sure I'm giving myself adequate time to focus on my career goals, my rehab goals, my personal goals. Another thing is that I make sure I get up on my feet every day. I do something. So even on those days when it's I don't have an hour to give to my rehab, do I have 5 minutes to just get into a standing position and do something? If you can't carve out 5 minutes for a goal, then you need to evaluate your time systems.
It's probably not a goal.
It's probably not a goal. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So that's really important to have too, are those little things that you can achieve every day to check off that box, give yourself that victory while working towards that larger vision. So for something like that, when I'm thinking of those like milestones to achieving that, certainly graduation was one of those to keep me kind of focused on a real tangible moment that I could achieve in that process of that larger goal of wheelchair independence.
It's interesting. Too many people, and you and I are in these conversations with business leaders all the time while we're out speaking. Too many people think of goals, and they it's a goal. Oh, that's our goal, but it's not meaningful enough that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Right? That idea about you have to want it, want it, feel it, taste it. Many people set goals that if they don't achieve them, they don't care, right? It is what it is, right? It wasn't meant to be. And you flow right by it and off to the next goal. That's not going to happen either. I think that some of what you just offered right there on goal setting is enormously important.
Yeah. If you don't want it that bad, just don't even waste your time. It's just a distraction. Like, actually, if you're going to set a goal, make it something that you really want.
And that you know why you really want it. Right. Yeah. That's a big part. So you said, I want to talk to you about forgiveness, because I think this is really important. You said that you've never received an apology from the player who injured you or that team's coach, which is amazing to me, but at first you said that frustrated you, and you've shown, but you've decided regardless to show forgiveness toward that player. How did you get to that place?
Wasn't easy. Was not easy. Easily one of the greatest mental challenges that I've had to deal with all of this. Because, in a sport like rugby, we have two forms of justice on the field. One is the referee calling a penalty, and the other is the justice that we enact with our shoulders. If someone does something dirty, if they intentionally hurt someone on your team, you got to let them know. You can't just get away with that. And here I had been knocked on my back. And not just that, but like my entire life was just completely changed, right? I couldn't eat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't bathe by myself. I might never go back to school again. I might never be able to get married, have a career. Like, everything has changed, right? And it wasn't because I just did something stupid. I was looking to achieve greatness in my life. And because of the actions of another person who hadn't and still has not shown remorse, I was dealing with all that. And there was a rage within me that I just can't describe. And as I've mentioned, my faith has played an important role in a lot of this. And it was the impetus for this decision of forgiveness. I knew very well that from that moral faith standpoint, that it was the direction for me to take. So it was honestly a fake it till you make it kind of thing in the beginning, that I was just like, I do not feel like forgiving this person, but I know I'm called to it. So I'm just going to say it. And when people would be in conversation, they'd be like, Robert, what do you think about this guy? What's your take? I would say I forgive him and I wish him well. But deep down within me, there was still a lot of anger. That's not a type of hatred you can just release by saying a few words. But as time went on, I stayed on the path. And if I ever got off of it, and I did at times, I got right back on and I'd say, I forgive him and I wish him well. I forgive him and I wish him well. And as time went on, and I continued to say those words, that anger just slowly went down and time was able to run its course. And as I had some time to reflect on it, rather than being so consumed by that animosity, I was able to see that forgiveness is not just about removing guilt from the person who did wrong. It's about removing those negative attachments from the person who was wronged. So I don't think there's a lot of generalizations in life where you can just say, like, this is always the answer. I can very confidently say that forgiveness is always the answer. And a lot of times I think of it as like a fire analogy, where I have this fire of rage burning, and initially someone else lights that fire right next to you, and then they get the heck out of there. And you're sitting there next to that fire, having to deal with it. And you can give hate to that person. You can put logs on the fire and let it burn, but it's only going to burn you. The approach that we have to take is just let it burn itself out. As much as you want to keep throwing wood in there, you want to keep saying negative things, you have to learn to detach from that. Realize it's a fake it till you make it kind of thing. You don't have to feel it internally to say it out loud. But as you choose that path over time, I just guarantee you 100% of the time, it will subside and you'll be freed, able to just focus on what's in front of you, not looking behind at what lays in the past.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
I've I had an amazing opportunity to witness it with a young man named Warwick Dunn many years ago, and it's one of the most fascinating and amazing and powerful gifts he gave to himself,
Yeah.
of forgiving somebody of something that was unforgivable. You have an upcoming book, Paralyzed to Powerful. Love the title. And it tells your story, but mostly it's filled with great advice to leaders. And one of the things, leaders are who we speak to in this podcast. And one of the things that we have asked almost every guest over the course of 4 years now is about the idea of teams and building teams. You've been around Jack Clark. You've been around great teams. If you're coaching one of us on how to build a great team, how to take a group of people who are independent contractors and form them together to do something special, how do you walk me through a couple of elements, something I need to think through as I'm building a great team?
Yeah. When I look back on the great teams that I've been a part of, I think like the biggest factor you have to have is everyone is bought in on something that's bigger than themselves. So just purely having a goal, whatever that means, I don't think it's enough. I think everybody has to realize that they have ownership in this endeavor and that it's bigger than themselves. So when I look back on my rugby experience growing up, and this applies with both Cal and Jesuit, the high school program that I played for, we weren't just thinking about like winning this for the group of 60 guys that were on our team, or do it for your coach, or just do it for yourself. I mean, it was generational, right? It was for the players who were going to come after us. It were for those players who came before us, for the donors that were supporting this program. For everybody involved, we owed this to them to give everything that we had. And it builds this like bought in type mindset that you just can't achieve if it's for like these selfish endeavors. If you're just kind of fighting for yourself, you're not accountable to much. But when you're accountable to something that's bigger than yourself, it keeps you moving forward. It unites that team. So it brought us to this just really close point where, rugby is a tough sport and you will experience pain. That is guaranteed. The reason we keep pushing through it is not just so that we can have our own individual accolades, it's that we can share it with others. So making sure that you have that selfless commitment, I think, is critically important, and that everybody really realizes that they're fighting for something that's bigger than themselves.
I love that. And I think an important piece as a leader is to make sure that they understand what bigger than themselves means, right? I think sometimes that phrase, it gets tossed out there. I want to do this because it's for something bigger than me. But what does that mean? And I love that. I think good leaders can do that. You know, Robert, I have to tell you, I'm riveted by the conversation, just as I have been by you. And I have to tell you, I'm so grateful that you would join us today. I want to ask, how can people connect with you and maybe even get to learn more and get more of your content?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I got to say, Don, that the pleasure is all mine, and I've just absolutely loved this. So my gratitude goes to you for having me on. But in terms of people getting in contact with me, I'm on all the social media sites: Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, LinkedIn. Kind of got a monopoly on the name Robert Paylor. There's not a lot of Paylors out there. So just look me up, Robert Paylor, and you'll find my stuff. Website's robertpaylor.com for speaking inquiries. And then finally, the book that you mentioned, Paralyzed to Powerful, coming out May 6th. I'm extremely excited about this book. So going to be available everywhere you buy books: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the good stuff. Just kind of breaking down, not just my story, but helping a reader identify what's paralyzing them. Is it anxiety? Is it grief? And what is it that's holding them back? Then sharing these tools that we've discussed today about what has helped me overcome my journey of paralysis, I think we can all use to overcome what paralyzes us in our lives. So really excited about that and hope that people enjoy it.
Awesome, Robert. I love it. What's paralyzing you? What a great question for all of us to ask. I'm grateful again to you, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Me too, Don. Thank you so much.
Okay. If you didn't have a tear welling in your eye during parts of that conversation, I did. I got to tell you, that is so overwhelming. And what a gift to have learned from Robert today. But I took 4 major takeaways, and I could have given you 20, but I'm going to take 4. The first is when he talked about going from asking the question, why me, to why not me, right? And how important that would be for all of us as we're trying to put perspective around what we're doing. In fact, he says the strongest tool you have in your toolbox while making that move is perspective. For those of you who might not have had a serious circumstance, right? Where he talked about just when he's struggling today, he thinks about the days he could barely breathe, the days when he couldn't imagine feeding himself. And for the rest of us who maybe don't have anything that dramatic, we can have empathy. And if we have the right empathy, it allows us to unite our emotions with the struggles of others. It allows us to relate, to hear a story like Robert's and actually help put perspective around our own struggles, from why me to why not me. My second great takeaway was when he talked about taking that trip to France and all those others who were around him who were afflicted by something and they were struggling, and that's when he and a priest actually came up with a phrase that grew to mean a lot to him. Compared to what? Right? It's where that phrase emerged. It's not meant to dismiss the challenge that you're having, but when you use perspective, you ask the question, like, I'm struggling with this today, compared to what, right? And it allows you to look at others and put that perspective, and it brings your challenge down to size. It makes it feel overcomable. Not sure if that's a word, but it is for today. The third, I loved his great discussion around goal setting, right? The idea that if your goal is big enough, if your goal is one that means enough to you, you're gonna think right to left, right? Remember the goals he was talking about? First, he just wanted to wiggle his toes. Then he had that goal. He envisioned himself walking across the stage to receive his diploma, and then now he has a goal of wanting to have to go through a day without using a wheelchair. But when you're doing that, you have to think of your goal. You have to think right to left, right? Not left to right. Most people want to start here. What do I have to do here, here, here? Oh, there's the goal. No, you start with the goal and you work backwards. You have to want it. You have to feel it. You have to taste it, he said. And if you don't want it that bad, don't waste your time. It's not really a goal. And then finally, the discussion on forgiveness, on forgiving, being able to forgive the person who injured him. And even though that person's never asked for it, even though that person has stayed locked in their own place, he began saying, I forgive him and I wish him well. He said it even when he didn't believe it, right? But he said, you fake it till you make it. And after a little while, you begin to believe it. And he has. And as he said, forgiveness is always the answer. What a powerful conversation. I'm better. I'm better as a man. I'm better as a leader. I'm better as I'm better for having been in Robert's circle today. And remember, we're live on YouTube now. So if you find value in this conversation, please hit subscribe and share it with a teammate. I appreciate you. They taught me to do the haka with them, which was a little embarrassing, but it's out there on video.
Okay, I was just going to ask, please tell me you have a recording of that.
Yeah, it's out there.